You've probably seen this question pop up online or in the news, right? Could a US president just cancel an election? It's a question that definitely gets your attention and, frankly, causes a lot of anxiety. So today, we're going to dig in and get the real law-based answer. Let's get right into it.
So let's frame this very specifically, because this is the core of it all. Can a sitting president use something like an executive order, maybe one that sounds really powerful, like Presidential Directive 51, to just cancel or postpone a federal election? This is the exact question that fuels so many debates and a whole lot of worry.
The short, simple, and legally concrete answer is no. But, just saying no isn't really enough, is it? The fascinating part is understanding why that's the answer. So let's unpack the legal safeguards that make it that way. Okay, so to really understand why the president can't do this, we have to start with a really basic question. Who's actually in charge of federal elections in the US? And the answer isn't just some legal trivia. It's woven right into the fabric of the Constitution. Now, take a good look at this chart. It breaks down the chain of command so clearly. But what's really important is what's missing. See that top line? The president's role in setting or changing an election date is none. Zero. The Constitution is super explicit here. Congress sets the date, and they did, way back in 1845, and then the states are in charge of actually running the whole thing. The executive branch was very intentionally left out of this process. And look, this isn't just some dusty old legal theory. We have a solid, unbroken history to back it up. For over 175 years, this idea has been stress-tested by the most extreme crises you can imagine. We held a presidential election in 1864, right in the middle of the Civil War. We held them right on schedule during World War II. This history sets an incredibly powerful precedent. That date is fixed. But I can already hear you thinking, okay, sure, but what about a real national emergency? What about all those emergency powers we hear about, those presidential directives like PDD 51? And you know what? That's a totally fair question, especially when you read just how broad the language in some of these directives can be. So let's look at the words themselves. The official term is a catastrophic emergency. And yeah, it sounds as serious as it is. It's that phrase at the end, disruption severely affecting government functions, that makes people's ears perk up. It sounds like it could cover an election, right? But here's the thing. There's a fundamental legal principle that even this powerful definition just can't get around. And this quote right here absolutely nails it. This is the key to the whole puzzle. Think of it like a legal pyramid. At the very, very top, you have the Constitution. That's the supreme law of the land. A level below that, you have federal laws passed by Congress. And then at the bottom, you have things like executive orders. Well, an order from the bottom of the pyramid can't just cancel out a law from the middle. And absolutely nothing can override the Constitution at the top. It's just not how it works. Okay, so a legal postponement is off the table. We've established that. But does that mean all the concern is for nothing? Not quite. And this is where the conversation has to get a little more nuanced. We need to pivot from the idea of legally postponing an election, which can't happen, to the very real fear of illegally disrupting one. Let's draw a super clear line between these two ideas. On the one hand, a legal postponement would be a huge deal. You'd need a brand new law to pass both the House and the Senate, and then the president would have to sign it. On the other hand, you have illegal disruption. This is the stuff of nightmare scenarios that really gets people worried. We're talking about things like mobilizing federal officers to secure polling places or creating chaos and long lines at specific voting sites. These actions don't legally cancel the election, but they're absolutely designed to illegally interfere with it. So what's the big defense against that kind of widespread chaos? Well, one of the biggest safeguards is built right into the system, and it comes down to this number, 50. A U.S. presidential election isn't one big national event. It's actually 50 separate state-run elections, all happening on the same day. That decentralized structure makes a coordinated top-down disruption really, really hard to pull off. But hey, let's play this out. Let's imagine the absolute worst-case scenario. Let's say widespread disruption does create chaos and prevents a clear result. Even in that extreme situation, there's one final, absolute, unbreakable firewall built right into the Constitution itself. And this is that firewall. It's a constitutional clock, and it is always ticking. The timeline is totally non-negotiable. Congress sets election day in November. On January 3rd, the new Congress is sworn in, and then comes the big one, the ultimate deadline, January 20th at high noon.
The 20th Amendment to the Constitution is crystal clear. The term of the president shall end. It doesn't say unless there's an emergency, there are no asterisks, it just ends. Period.
This Reddit comment just sums up the whole thing perfectly. It's a beautiful catch-22. Any attempt to delay an election to hold on to power actually guarantees that you lose power. Why? Because it doesn't extend the presidential term by a single second. At 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, that person is a private citizen. Their constitutional term has expired. The only way to get a new term is to win a new election.
So, what happens in that power vacuum if there's no result? The presidential line of succession just kicks in automatically. And in a truly chaotic scenario where nobody new is seated in the House or Senate, power would pass to the president pro tempore of the Senate. And here's the ironic twist someone pointed out. The remaining holdover senators would almost certainly form a Democratic majority, meaning they would be the ones to pick the new acting president. Talk about a plan backfiring.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the Constitution to emergency powers, all the way to that doomsday constitutional clock. So let's boil it all down into the most important takeaways.
So let's just run through it one more time. The president has zero authority to cancel an election. That power belongs to Congress, and the power to actually run the elections belongs to the states. That means the real practical concern isn't a legal postponement. It's the threat of illegal disruption. But even in that worst-case scenario, the 20th Amendment is the ultimate backstop. No matter what, that clock runs out on January 20th.
So in the end, the law provides a very clear answer here. A president cannot just cancel an election. But the bigger and maybe more important question isn't just about what's legal. It's about that space between the letter of the law and what is possible. It's a good reminder that the strength of any rule or any constitutional guardrail really depends on our collective will to uphold it. Thanks for tuning into this explainer.